You know, there's this constant tension at the heart of a developing nation like India. On one side, you've got this incredible push for progress. We're talking new highways, massive factories, sprawling cities. But on the other side, you have the people who live on that land, whose families have been there for generations. Today, we're diving deep into the one law that was supposed to solve this exact problem and figure out what went wrong.
And really, this is the question that everything else boils down to, isn't it? This isn't just about dirt and property lines. It's about memories, it's about communities, it's about how people make a living. Every single time you hear about a new dam or a new industrial park, this dilemma is playing out in real time. It's a story of progress, for sure, but it's also a story of displacement and the very real search for justice.
So, to really get why the new law was such a big deal, we have to go back and understand the problem it was trying to fix. And that problem, well, it was more than 100 years old. It was a leftover from the British colonial era.
Just try to wrap your head around that. A law from 1894 was being used to manage land deals in the 21st century. It gave the government almost unlimited power to take land for any reason it vaguely called a public purpose. Did they need your consent? Nope. Was the compensation fair? Almost never. The human cost, the fact that entire communities and ways of life were being wiped out, that wasn't even part of the equation. It was a system built on pure power, not fairness.
Okay, so fast forward to 2013. A groundbreaking new law gets passed to finally get rid of this colonial relic. Now, its full name is a bit of a mouthful: the Right to Fair Compensation and Transparency in Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation, and Resettlement Act. But its goal? Oh, its goal was beautifully simple: to make the whole process fair, transparent, and, well, human.
This chart right here shows you just how huge of a change this was. It's night and day. Look at compensation. It goes from just the basic market value to potentially 4 times that amount. Consent? It goes from being completely ignored to being a requirement for private projects. And for the very first time, the law demanded a social impact assessment to actually figure out the human cost. This wasn't just a minor edit, it was a complete reinvention of the rules.
Let's zero in on this number for a second. 4 times. That's the level of compensation that was promised for land taken in rural areas. The idea was to really pay people not just for the piece of dirt, but for the massive disruption to their entire life, recognizing that for a farmer, the land is everything.
And in the cities, for urban areas, the compensation was set at twice the market value. Now, it's less than the rural number, but it was still a huge step up. It was an admission that forcing someone out of their home in a city also comes with a massive cost. You lose your networks, your job access, everything.
Now this number, 80%, this might be the most powerful part of the whole law. It meant that for a private company to come in and buy up land for a project, they needed to get the approval of 80% of the families affected. 80%! For public-private partnerships, it was 70%. This was a massive check on corporate power, giving communities a real say for the very first time.
And it didn't stop there. The Act did so much more. It made the definition of public purpose much stricter so it couldn't be abused. It had this brilliant rule that if the government took land and then didn't use it for 5 years, they had to give it back. It put in special protections for really fertile farmland to make sure we could still feed ourselves. And maybe most importantly, it demanded full rehabilitation packages, not just a check, but a real plan to help people build a new life. On paper, it was incredible.
But here's the thing about laws, right? A law is only as good as the people who enforce it. And a recent report from a parliamentary committee has shown this massive, heartbreaking gap between what the 2013 Act promised and what's actually happening to people on the ground.
I mean, this quote just hits you right in the gut. A law that was designed to be a shield for the most vulnerable has somehow, in too many cases, been twisted into a weapon to be used against them. So the big question is, how? How did it go so wrong?
Well, the report lays it all out. It points to these huge, systemic failures that just got the law from the inside. Those social impact assessments? A lot of the time, they're just a joke, a box-ticking exercise. Reports are written to make the project look good, not to actually assess the impact. We're seeing rural land, which should get 4x compensation, being sneakily reclassified as urban just to cut the payout in half. People are getting cash to rehabilitate, but then there's no developed land for them to move to, so they're left homeless. And all those special protections for indigenous communities, often just ignored. And this right here, shows you how deep the problem goes. The law created these special tribunals, they're called LARAs, to give families a quick path to justice. But a decade later, A full decade. Many states just haven't even set them up. So if your rights are violated, where are you supposed to turn? The very road to justice that was promised is a dead end.
Okay, so it sounds pretty bleak, but the report doesn't just leave us with the problems. It actually gives a really clear, really thoughtful roadmap for how to fix this, for how to finally make the law live up to its original promise.
And this is a really powerful idea at the center of it all. The committee says we need to stop thinking about market value and start thinking about livelihood value. What that means is that compensation has to account for everything a community loses. Not just the land, but access to the forest, the river, their social networks, their whole economic world. It's a shift from a purely financial calculation to a truly human-centric one. It's a game changer.
And the recommendations are super practical. First, give real power back to the local village councils, the Gram Sabhas. Make their consent a must-have and give them a veto. Second, transparency. Put every single document, from the impact studies to the payment details, on a public website for everyone to see. No more secret deals. And third, and this is a big one, immediately set up those LARAs in every single state. No more excuses.
The committee also had some other really smart ideas, like what if the affected communities actually became partners in the project? What if they got a share of the profits? And what if we fully baked in the protections from the Forest Rights Act? They also suggested a central agency to stop that shady land reclassification. And here's a simple, humane rule. Nobody gets moved until their new home and their new site are 100% ready to go.
So that's where we're left. We have the 2013 Act, a promise of justice, a promise of fairness. We have the reality, a story of failure and heartbreak for way too many people. But now we also have a clear path forward, a roadmap for reform. The only question that remains is whether there's enough political will to actually walk that path and to finally make this law work for the very people it was created to protect.